This video is to help people understand how to reconstitute their PMC, which is precious metal clay, back into clay. So when you're working with your metal clay, sometimes you might make something that you decide later you don't want to pursue as far as firing goes. So you can put it in your scrap. This is all scrap here, different kinds of scrap, different pieces and particles. So you have dust, which looks like this. It's very, very fine particles of PMC that happens when you're using your sponges to do your sanding, or if you're using your files to do some shaping. This is perfect material right here for putting in your precious metal clay paste. So if you have your paste and you've used a lot of it and you need more, you can make more using the dust from your sponges and your files. And all you do is you put it in and you add some water. Then you spritz it with your little sprayer. Get a bit of water in there. And then you're going to take your spatula and you're going to stir it in. Always keep your spatula engaged with the bottom of your container so that you don't add in a bunch of air whenever you're stirring your paste. So you're going to stir this until all the paste is wet, and then you're going to put the lid on and you're going to wait 24 hours. And in 24 hours this will be smooth and creamy and you'll be able to use it for your paste. The next thing I'm going to show you is how to get your PMC into smaller particles so it's easier to reconstitute and make back into clay if you're not going to use it for your paste. So you could reconstitute chunks like this. It would just take longer, and then you would have, in the end, you would have a lot of little baby lumps to deal with, which take a long time to make smooth. So what I like to do is I like to put it in a mortar and pestle. Use a big hammer, big plastic hammer. So that's how you get it to become powdery, and that's a really good form for it to be in when you're making your clay, reconstituting it into clay. All right, now I'm going to put it in my little plastic box. I like to reconstitute when this little plastic box, which you can get at the Nadja Tool & Supply, is about 2/3 full. Most of my students have already heard this, but they haven't really seen it in action, so they've asked me to do this video, and I'm doing it for them. I'm going to take some of the paste, not the chunks. The chunks I would be making smaller, but I'm going to put a lot of the powder, which is pretty easy to reconstitute. Make sure there's no bigger lumps in here. So this is just scrap that I've had from teaching and from working on my own pieces. I'm going to pull the little chunks out. Okay, so that's about 3/4 full. Now the next thing you're going to do is you're going to take your sprayer, I want it back, and you're going to spray it quite a bit. What you want to do is you want to get all the particles of the PMC coated with water. But you don't want to make it so wet that you turn it into paste. So there is a fine line in doing this. You will have to spray it several times, and then you're going to just move the PMC around in the container until you see just a bunch of little balls, because that'll be all of the PMC is got some water around it, which is what you're trying to do. There's no magic number of sprays. You just spray it until you see that they're kind of all in little balls. It's starting to get that way now, but it's not quite there yet. Okay, but it is kind of balling up. So I'm going to keep doing this until I see that I just have a bunch of balls. And that tells me that most of the PMC has contact with water. And what it's going to do is it's going to absorb the water and bond together in a bigger lump. So as you can see, it's starting to turn into the little balls I was talking about. Okay, still not there yet though. So I use 6 or 7 spritzes, something like that. There's no magic number. It always depends on how much clay you're reconstituting. I personally wouldn't reconstitute anything that wasn't at least 2/3 of this size, because you're really not going to get much for your effort. So you might as well wait until you have a fairly good amount before you go through this process. So you know, you end up with you know, a fair amount of grammage, which means I think for about this much PMC, you're going to end up, once you've reconstituted, you're going to end up with about 40 grams or so, 45 grams maybe. So when you're doing PMC, nothing is wasted. If nothing else, you can use it in your paste. So what I'm doing right now is I'm just compressing it with my ruler, and I love to use this steel jeweler's ruler. See, I'm kind of compressing it, almost kneading it like dough. And then I'm going to get it out of there, and I'm going to compress it on the other side. What I'm trying to do is coat all the particles of PMC with water. I'm going to do it one more time, and then I'm going to let it sit for a couple hours. For 1 hour first, and then I'm going to check it. So now it's kind of all sticking together, which is kind of what you're going for. And now I'm going to let it sit for an hour and absorb the water that I sprayed on there, and then I'm going to knead it some more with my ruler, and then we'll see where we're at. Now we've come to an hour, and we're going to check it and see how it's progressing and how it's absorbing the water that you initially put in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to scrape it all in a pile. I'm just condensing it more. I'm kind of kneading it like you would dough, only I'm using the metal ruler to do it. Because you can kind of smash it down and pull it, I'm trying to crush it and pull it so I can really get all the particles combined. And so that's looking pretty good right there. Not usable yet, but I don't think I'm going to need to add any more water. I'm just going to need to knead it a little bit just to make sure all the particles are completely covered with some water. This is really a good consistency. You don't want it wetter than this. If for some reason you spray it too much and it is wetter, then just get it all in the bottom and let it sit out for maybe an hour, and then re-knead it and then put the top on. This is, I can't really show you, but this is an awesome consistency. It's not really sticking to my finger at all. So that's a good sign. This is really in a good place. And in the next hour, I'm going to pick it up and I'm going to knead it with my fingers. But right now I'm going to put it back in. I'm going to make sure it's in one ball. And I'm going to let it sit for another hour. I'm going to get it all off my ruler, and then I'm going to put the top on and let it sit for the second hour. Now it's been 2 hours, and we're going to check it again, and I'm going to get it out this time just because I think it might be ready for that. I have to check. If it sticks to my fingers, then it isn't ready. So I'm going to stick it there. I'm going to get everything out of here. That's why I like this metal ruler, because it gets in the corners. You can pretty much get everything out. You can also push on it when you're kneading it in there. You can really push on this. Is pretty flexible and strong. All right, now let's see where we're at. Oh, it's looking really good. I like to go from the edges and push it in to the center. So I'm just going to keep doing that for, oh, you know, a minute. And get it all one nice, creamy kind of homogenized lump. And I'm just going to keep, I don't feel too many little lumps in there, so I think this is really, really close to being usable. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to now set it like this, so it's kind of in a little patty. And I'm going to put it back in here, and I'm going to leave it for 1 more hour. Right now, I want to find out how many grams is in this reconstituted lump here. So I'm going to take my Gemoro digital scale, and I'm going to turn it on, and I'm going to see, make sure it's on grams. There it is. There's the G. And this weighs 42.7, which I thought it would weigh around 40 grams. So that's good to know. Now I'm going to show you how to wrap it up and keep it moist until you want to use it. This clay right now is in a really awesome spot. It needs about 20, it's really perfect because it's not sticking to me at all. It's very pliable, and it does have a few little lumps in it. You can see right here. That just needs a little more time to absorb and get smooth, but there's hardly any lumps in here, which is awesome. When you do this and your clay, your little particles that you start with are not super fine, you're going to have a lot of lumps to get out, and it takes longer to reconstitute. So if you want to reconstitute quickly, you want to use the powdery PMC that you're going to get from your files and your sponges when you're cleaning up your dry clay. So this is really, I wouldn't use it today, but I would use it in the morning. See, there's a little lump right there. You could even pull them out if there's not very many, and there's really not very many in here. All right, so I like to flatten it a bit, and then I have some saran wrap. This has already been folded in half, and I'm going to fold it in again. I've experimented with a lot of ways to keep clay moist when you're not using it, if you have to save it for some reason. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back a little bit with my spritzer, and I'm going to spray it twice on both sides, and then I'm going to lay it down. And it's really important that it's flat. It will absorb better, and it'll stay moist better. So then I'm going to try to get a lot of the air out. Try to keep it fairly tight. And then I'm going to spritz my box, and then I'm going to put my clay inside my box, and then I'm going to put my lid on. And typically what I do is, if I'm not going to use this clay for a while, say many weeks, then I'm going to set it somewhere where maybe in my bathroom or somewhere where I can see it and be reminded to check it. Because all you have to do to check it, let's say a week's gone by, and now you want to maybe use it the next day, and you're checking to make sure that you can use it the next day, and all you do is bend it in the package. If it's bendy, you're good to go. If it's not super bendy, a little bit stiff, then you're going to open it up, and you're going to redo what I just did. Spritz, 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 close it up, put it in your box, give it a spritz, and then it should be perfect in 24 hours. So what I would do is I would keep this together. Let's say I wasn't going to use it for a couple weeks. I would check it weekly. I would not have this in the sun or anywhere that it's super warm. Bathrooms are fine because it's humid in there, and that's kind of good. And so just check it once a week. Even put a reminder on your iPhone. If you have a smartphone, you can put a reminder on there, remind you to check your your scrap. And in case you want to work, let's say you're going to work in 2 weeks, but you need to keep it moist until then you check it once a week, and when you're ready to use it, it'll be ready to be used. I hope this was helpful to you. Thank you so much.